All right, guys, it's Jahlon, and last week I introduced my community to Pax Dei, game and development by Mainframe Industries, and I haven't had a chance to do any more real introduction of the game, because as I'm getting Pax Dei 101 set up, as I'm going through everything they've said, something came up where one of the developers talked about a PLEX-like item. It's an item which is bought on the game website, costs the same or similar to a monthly sub, can be traded between players, can only be used in relation to the game by destroying it to add a month sub. Players have to in some way pay the cost of making and running the game. There's no way around it. Their aim, Mainframe Industries' aim, is to do it in a way which is agreeable to all who appreciate the game enough and who are willing to contribute. The last statement, I honestly have no clue if we're going to introduce PLEX or not. All I know is that it is a simple and extremely easily understandable system that is good for the player market, first and foremost, the people who spend a lot of time in the game. Now, I disagree with the idea that PLEX, Apex, Runescape bonds, whatever, are good for the game, because there is a large feeling among players that PLEX tokens, Runescape bonds, they're pay to win. What we're going to do is we're going to look at this real quick. We all know that the second point that was made in that post, yes, the players have to bear the burden of paying for the game. And there are a lot of standard monetization strategies employed. You have buy to play. This is only a box price. It's one and done. You buy the box, you play the game. You have mandatory monthly subs, which are usually a little bit better for the developer and the publisher because they get a recurring, fee every month. And MMORPGs really are a game as an online service. People are willing to pay for Netflix, they're willing to pay for Hulu, Disney Plus, HBO, but then when it comes to paying for an MMORPG, they balk at that, which has always been strange to me. You have the idea of freemium, which is free to play with an optional monthly sub. As we know from the last 25 years, freemium games that are free to play with that optional monthly sub really does become a mandatory monthly sub, or you fall behind. You have games that are straight free to play with some sort of cash shop. Players usually balk at these as well because those cash shops, more often than not, have pay to win elements in them. Now, I do know that the Riot MMORPG that's in development, a lot of people are saying they could probably turn around and do a straight cosmetic cash shop, and I don't disagree with that. And then you've got a box price with a mandatory sub. This is your World of Warcraft. This is your Final Fantasy XIV. You have two different monetization strategies. And then there are games that have a box price plus a monthly sub plus a cash shop. And players, as long as there's no pay to win in the cash shop, players kind of resent this because with a box price and a monthly sub, everything should be available in game. But the players understand that the companies need to make money too. The problem comes in is that we don't know what model Pax Dei is going to use yet. They haven't announced what their strategy is, but they have hinted at that subscription token. Now, they've hinted at it, but they've outright said they're not guaranteed doing it. And so this is going to be a PLEX, an Apex, a WoW token, a RuneScape bond, whichever one you're familiar with. If you're not familiar with these are called subscription tokens. Player A buys it from the publisher for real world money. Player A then sells that token to player B for in-game gold, and everyone wins, right? The studio gets the money, player A gets in-game gold, player B gets their sub time paid for without real world money. But the problem is it isn't that simple, and it's not that easy to understand because this is legal gold buying. This is legal pay to win. This is using real world money for an advantage. So what you have is you have 3 players, and each player can make 10,000 gold per month. Now, yes, I know sometimes you'll have players that on their own can make more than the standard. Very often you have players that make less than the standard. But for our example, these 3 players are making 10 gold per month. But what they're spending on the game is the first player is spending 15 for their sub and 15 to buy a token. The middle player is only paying for their subscription. And the third player is paying nothing monthly. What happens here is player A sells a PLEX to player C for 3,000 gold. So now really what you have is the middle player and the player paying $30 a month, they're no longer equal. Real world money has come into the discussion. This becomes a problem because ultimately it is setting the PLEX standard. 3,000 gold is worth $15, 1,000 gold becomes worth $5, and while absolutely this pays dividends in keeping the gold sellers out of your game, because why would you risk buying gold from a third-party site when you can buy gold straight from the developer? It does create a problem where two players that are working equally hard in-game, one of them is using real-world money for buying power, and now there's a product on the market, the marketplace, the auction house being sold by a crafter, whatever. Well, one player has more buying power simply due to their real-world wallet. The problem here is this doesn't always just stop at one PLEX. This is not uncommon to see a player will spend $60 to $100 a month in PLEX. EVE Online players did this. Archeage players did this. This was not an uncommon scenario. So now, unfortunately, you have one player with 22,000 and one player with 10, and this has absolutely changed the in-game market. It's radically reduced the second player's ability to acquire whatever is on the auction house in that time frame. Now, the problem is this is providing a tangible benefit. Faster gearing has been one-for-one faster progression in every game I've played in the last 25 years. Those that can get to the end game content first benefit from it because those items either create more power or those end game items can be sold to generate more resources. As they become less scarce, they become less valuable. So that first end game sword, that first end game shield, that first end game mount has a really high price tag attached to it, and those with the ability to gear up faster either continue to stay ahead or they become really rich selling those items. This absolutely does impact the economy. If anybody ever tries to say that the Apex, the PLEX, the Runescape bonds don't affect the in-game economy, this is false. As an economist, as an economy teacher, what this is doing is this is causing demand pull inflation. This is when you have too much money relative to the economy's abilities to produce goods. This is what makes rare items really rare, what makes rare items bid up. This is basically one for one and equate to the real world housing situation that we have right now. Home prices are up because the availability of vacant homes is down. Like I said, this creates the PLEX standard. A crafter sold that item at 13,000 before, so that crafter doesn't really want to just start selling it for cheaper. This artificially brings the prices up, and even if that crafter has to reduce their prices in order to make sales, chances are they're not going to reduce it down to 10,000 right away. They'll try 13,000, then 11,000, then 10.5. And so where prices should have naturally been falling, the price got pulled to the right. So now the fallen price is actually higher than it would have been had PLEX not been introduced. We also have to make sure that the developers are aware that if they're going to introduce PLEX, then they need to make sure that the game economy is tuned, or they will artificially inflate the number of alts. And everybody has played a game that has this situation. If alts can produce easy money, many players will run one or more alts. We saw this in EVE Online. Most people, like myself, who were miners, did not just work with one miner. We worked with 6 or 8 or 12 miners because it was very easy to multi-box. It was very easy to multi-client. Archeage players as well, they can speak somewhat intelligently on alts holding too much property. Property one for one equaled resources, equaled income, equaled gold. From what Pax Dei has been talking about, more players under the control, or more characters under the control of a single player will most definitely, almost certainly generate more gold. So if Mainframe is going to say the PLEX system won't impact the game, they need to make sure that alts don't have the ability to produce easy money. This also will then drive up the token price, and that once again impacts the PLEX standard. As long as there's money to be made selling PLEX, people will spend a little bit of real world money to get that advantage, and then you're systematically just spinning the wheel over and over and over again. There are benefits, though, to a PLEX system. This allows players to play for free, or more accurately, it allows players to play for just their time. They invest their time into the game, they earn gold, they can stay in the game. This lowers the barrier to entry. With that said, I acknowledge the benefits for the PLEX system argument, but I will say that if you can't afford $15 a month on a monthly subscription for a game as a service, then maybe video gaming isn't where you should be spending your time, effort, energy, and resources, and you should be working on your side hustle. With that said, I really do hope that the developers at the developers at Mainframe Industries aren't, mad at me. I figure I might as well just make this video right in the beginning, because if I'm going to get ostracized again, if I'm going to be put into the corner by a developer, I would rather do that upfront early and let them know that there are a lot of players that feel the way I do. With that said, I'm going to include a poll in the description below. Go ahead and vote on that poll and leave as many comments as you feel are necessary to discuss this point. Keep it respectful. Don't attack other people. Just look at the arguments, but realize there are going to be people who totally support the PLEX system. There are going to be people who totally are against the PLEX system. Let's make sure that we're staying on point. We're addressing the points and not the posters. You guys take care, and I'm going to get this in a post and get back to working on Pax Dei 101.